This is supply and demand, how consumers and producers determine price in a market economy. And as you recall, America is a great example of a market or capitalistic economy. We know that in a command economy, the government has a large say in determining what the price is. But in a capitalist or market economy, how is price determined? And it goes back to a relationship between supply and demand, or producers and consumers. First, you need to know what producers and consumers are. Producers are the people that make the product. They are the people that start the businesses. Consumers are the people that use that product, or the people that buy that product. And it is the interaction between producers and consumers, business owners, and buyers of the product that ultimately determine the price in a market economy. In order for a product to be produced, it has to benefit both groups. Producers need to be able to make money. As you recall, in a market economy, one of the major values is the ability to make money or a profit. And consumers need to have a desire to buy that product in order for it to be sold. As we've already discussed, competition in a market economy is key. We have tons and tons and tons of competition, and as we've said, competition is good for the consumer. How does competition benefit the consumer? As you recall, you get more product choices or lots of variety. You get cheap or cheaper prices, and you get more innovations or new ideas. Without competition, you have a situation called a monopoly. A monopoly is bad for the consumer because it does not allow for all of these things. So back to how price is set. There is something called demand. Demand is the amount of a good that a consumer will buy at a given price. Consumers, again, are the buyers of the product. Demand is dependent upon many, many factors. The law of demand says, if the price is low, the demand is high. If the price is high, the demand is low. And again, that makes sense. Demand speaks to what the consumer or the buyer of a product wants. And if you think about yourself, you would rather get a product when it is cheaper or at a cheaper price than when it is at a higher price. That's what every consumer, or at least every rational consumer, wants. Demand and price. The lower the cost of the product, the greater the demand will be. The higher the cost, the lower the demand will be. Example, McDonald's dollar menu. If you think about the dollar menu, those items are in high demand because they are, in theory, good, but realistically, cheap. And if you look at it represented on this graph, you can see that as the price is high, the quantity that people want is low, but the lower the price gets, down here at $5, the more of it that people want. But there are other factors that affect demand, not just price. Location and convenience. Sometimes things are easier, and therefore you'd be willing to spend a little bit more money to get that product. If the price goes down again or up, that may change the demand of the product. Change in popularity. Certain products are brand new, they've just come out, and they are very, very popular. An iPhone 5. Therefore, it might be expensive, but people are still willing to purchase it. And reviews and ratings. If a product gets a very positive review or a very negative review, that might impact the demand for that product. And again, demand is how much of that product people want. we have producers and supply. We already talked about consumers and demand. So supply is the amount of a good that a producer is willing to sell or will sell at a given price. Producers, again, are the people that own a business and make the product. And supply is dependent on many factors. So if you think about it, what could affect the supply of orange juice in America? The law of supply. When the price is high, the supply is high. And if you think about it, supply is from the perspective of the business owner. So naturally, the business owner would rather sell his product at a high price than at a low price. But just to kind of preview what's going to happen in the future, you know that consumers want to buy the product at a low price. So there might seem to be a discrepancy between this statement, which is the law of supply, and the law of demand. When the price is low, the supply is low. I need to make money, and I'm not making money at a low price. This is a direct relationship. Remember, producers want to make as much money as they possibly can. And just as we represented demand on a line, we can represent supply. So if you look at it, at a low price, the producer doesn't want to sell as much. But when the price is high, the producer is much more willing to sell lots of them. There are other factors affecting supply. Demand for products using similar materials. A change in production cost, so if it now costs more to make that product. And a change in availability of raw materials. Supply and demand work together in order to determine what the price is going to be. So it's not always as if producers and consumers sit down and say, let's think of the price, but they do work together. Producers want to maximize their profits. A surplus is a situation when they have produced too much. It's a waste. They don't want that. A shortage is when there is not enough, meaning they can't meet the demand of the consumers. So let's look at how to graph supply and demand together. It's a demand line followed by a supply line. Where supply and demand cross, or where this arrow is what is known as the equilibrium price. That is, in a market economy, the ideal price for a consumer, for a producer to sell his product. So the equilibrium price is the point at which supply and demand meet. This is the place at which there is no shortage and no surplus. This is the best place for a product, or the best price for a product to be sold. So let's demonstrate how this works by plotting these points on a line. And we're doing our supply line first, plotting each of these points along the graph, and we connect the dots, and you can see the supply line. And again, this is true that at a lower price, which is down here, we're willing to sell less of them because we're not making as much money. At a higher price, up here at 160, we're willing to produce or sell a lot more of them. But of course we have demand, what the consumer or the buyer actually wants. And we know that at a high price, the demand for that product is not that much. People don't want to spend a lot of money for a product. As the price lowers, the demand for that product increases, and we cross our line, which gives us then our equilibrium price, which is where they cross. And the equilibrium price says that at $120, they're willing to sell that many units, which is 75. That is the equilibrium price in a market economy, or the ideal price for that product to be sold. And that is how supply and demand work together to meet or determine the price in a market economy.